Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. I'm Eric Hansen, and on behalf of everyone at OTT.X, I want to thank you all for joining us today to the series where we bring you insightful, thought-provoking presentations across a broad spectrum of OTT-related topics from thought leaders across our industry. Today, we're excited to have with us Mr. Jason Cohen. He is the CEO of MyBundle TV. MyBundle is a platform that is simplifying streaming discovery management for consumers, streaming services, and internet service providers. Before joining the real world in 2019, Jason was a portfolio manager at Buckingham Capital Management, analyzing and investing in the media and telecom sector for over 8 years. I know we're looking forward to his presentation today entitled The Streaming Revolution, How Streaming Services and Internet Providers Can Thrive in a Decoupled World. But first, we also want to thank MyBundle TV for participating in our webinar series today and for the great support of OTT.X, including valuable contributions in our conferences and workshops. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason Cohen from MyBundle TV. Jason, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today. All right, let me share my screen right here and then we could get started. Okay, cool. All right, so thank you again, everybody, for being here. My name is Jason Cohen. I put that in there for Eric joining the real world because obviously the operator world, like most people on this call probably are, I spent the beginning of my career in the finance world. And I thought what I would do, because so much of what is driving everybody's day-to-day now is really driven by the stock market and some of the very large corporations that are changing the game here. And so I thought I would, start the presentation just giving you a little bit of a history, right, even over the last decade, about what's driving things. I'm going to jump here for a second because this man and his company, I guess the soon-to-be former CEO of Amazon, is probably most responsible for everything that's happening today. And frankly, even before we get into Amazon Prime and Amazon Video, it's really the company that is Amazon, right? And what he did was, what the company did and what the stock market did, right, was understand or believe rather that making money today, or what he convinced people, is that making money today is not the most important thing, right? He was selling an idea. He successfully sold the concept of subscriptions, right? That's Prime Video. And he successfully, over the last 20 years, right, really built this new way of the market thinking about things. And I really want to focus just about the time period post 2007, because that's when this really took off. And back in the hedge fund world, I called it's the Amazon pixie dust, right? And it didn't affect just media companies or just telecom companies. It really impacted technology companies all across the marketplace. And what this pixie dust really meant is that if a company can convince the market, can convince investors that at the end of the rainbow, there's this massive pot of gold, then you can do some pretty cool things, right? Because as probably a lot of people on this call or webinar know, like you kind of need to make money today. But if you don't need to make money today, then it makes things a lot easier. And frankly, that's where we really get the beginning of the streaming revolution was Netflix, right? And I'll admit I was an early doubter, not of the business as a consumer, but as how the heck are they going to ever make any money, right? And the answer is they didn't for a very, 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 very long time. But they convinced the equity markets that there was this future that they should believe in. They convinced the debt markets, right, that there was this future that should be believed in. And so for over the years, they were able to borrow at relatively low rates, invest that money in content. And obviously, we all know the story of Netflix, right? We obviously started in DVDs, then came to streaming by licensing other people's content. And that's probably the subject of an entirely new webinar is, man, what would have happened if all the content guys got together and sort of did it themselves, right? And if Hulu would have come before Netflix instead of Netflix getting it. And obviously, Netflix has done some incredible things, able to take that licensed business model, get into original production, so on and so forth. And we're here today where, Netflix really started this obviously all off. What's interesting, right, is, okay, so Netflix was streaming in 2015, 2016, they were adding subscribers, right? if we fast forward a little bit to what my personal view is, that Disney Plus, right, and credit to Bob Iger, they broke the bundle, right? They really broke this thing wide open, because what they said to a generation of millennials, right, with little kids, is that, hey, you know what? You don't have to subscribe to a big bundle to get the content that your 4, 5, 10-year-old daughter is going to want to watch, or your 8, 12, 14-year-old son is going to want to watch, right? And so by Disney Plus coming onto the scene, you were able to now get that content and say, hey, do I need that bundle, right? And we'll get to kind of where we are today in a second. But why did he do that, right? How did he, frankly, right, have the balls to make that call, right? That was probably one of the hardest business decisions to make in the last 20 years, because we all know how much money Disney makes per bundle subscriber. So they're trading, if I cut the cord and I give up $17, right, of subscription revenue for maybe $6.99 of streaming revenue. Well, and in the old world, that doesn't work, right? In a business school, that's a terrible decision. But I think they realized, and I personally believe, that if they wouldn't have made that decision, yeah, there might still be more bundle subscribers today than there are, but we'd all be going to Netflix world and Amazon Prime land, right? Disney has probably the best IP, if not certainly the best IP of any company, right, at scale. But if you put it behind a wall and consumers have other ways to get other content, they would have. And he saw that, right? And he obviously made the decision to dive right in, right? And I think everything that we're kind of going through right now is sort of the end result of that, right? At the same time, kind of that was happening, you had the distributors, right? So what was going on with the Comcasts and the Charters of the world, right? And for a long time, you know, they'd report earnings quarterly, and what would happen? They would report in the beginning, right, 2014, 15, as subs started to drift, they report video losses and the stock would go down. And the next quarter would come along and they'd report video losses and the stock would go down again. And eventually, and I could be wrong, but I believe it was Charter who kind of made the first move at it. It's kind of said, well, we're not a video company, we're a broadband company, right? And in fact, the smaller company that people may or may not be familiar with, Cable One, right, who is now Sparklight, they basically were the first ones to really basically say, we're not a video company, we are a broadband company, right? And the market loved it, right? It very quickly, Cable One had the highest multiple of anything. Anytime they put out numbers, they were cheered, right? Because it was all about broadband subs. And it's sort of, there was a quarter, I remember sitting at my desk where I think it was Comcast, right, put out their numbers, and they had video sub declines, but broadband sub ads. Stock went down for about 30 minutes and then it went up. And it was almost like this kind of glass shattered, and I'm sure it did, you know, across in the corporate suites there as well, where it's like, wait a second, okay, maybe we've changed the story. And frankly, they have, right? I mean, if you look at the last 2 years of stock performance, and I'll share, I was in the room where the CEO of, I'm not going to say which one of these major companies, this was probably 3 years ago, he was giving a presentation, and it was like, look, we all went to the same business schools, and in those business schools, the answer was, you're supposed to make money, right? The value of a stock is the NPV of your cash flows, of your dividends. And what we really saw was like, and that's what we're going to do. And kind of fast forward 2 years later, I think the pixie dust effect has really climbed the wall, and it's not about making money right now, right? It's really about that story. It's really about, can you get investors to believe that at the end of the rainbow, and it doesn't mean that it's false, right? But by convincing investors that that story exists, you get the time, you get the runway that you otherwise would not have been able to do. So that's sort of the little background, just to share some market caps, just to get the concept right. Netflix right now, $243 billion market cap. Roku, right, $53 billion market cap. Viacom, 30 billion. Discovery, 20. AMC, 2.4. Apple, 2.3 trillion, right? Amazon, 1.7 trillion. Google, 1.3 trillion, right? So in the time it took me to basically read that sentence, Apple most likely went up or down a bunch of AMCs, right? Maybe even a Discovery, right? And it's a crazy world because the market certainly, right, is not focused on what those guys are doing in video today, but they also have a potential, right, obviously a massive impact on what's going on right now. So that's a little bit of the stock market, I guess, is a kind of history. right? I think now if we think about what actually happened, and when I talk about what's going on right now, right? Streaming, sure, it's great, it's on demand, but what really happened is the internet came like a tornado, like it did to many industries before it, right? It completely changed the travel industry. Obviously, it completely changed the retail industry. And what it does is it changes, for the most part, distribution channels, right? And I personally believe that's really what this streaming is really all about, right? So if you think back to history a little bit, you had cable companies, right, dominated. In come the satellite guys. Why? Well, what if we could just bring the signal down from the air, right? Enters competition. And so what we're going through now is really satellite company, right? The vMVPDs today are satellite company 2.0, right? It's the new player, and it's really all streaming. And what it is it's the end of the cable box, right? It's really cord cutting we all use, and there's a lot of different terminology. You know, we all say OTT, over the top. I'll never forget, I was explaining to my sister-in-law why I was leaving the hedge fund world to start MyBundle.tv and talking about over the top. And she's like, why would anybody want anything that's over the top? That sounds horrible, right? And so I think there's a funny like kind of term, meaning over the top, extra, unnecessary, right? Which is obviously not what as an industry we're going for. But the idea is you're not really cutting the cord, right? You're really ditching the box, right? Because what streaming is about taking control away from the provider of internet into your household, right? From one player, and saying, okay, now anybody can basically have a box, right? There are 10 platforms. There's the TV OEMs, there's Roku, there's Amazon, there's Google, there's obviously Apple TV. And the idea here is it's choice, right? And so what streaming is real about is taking out that distribution channel that was the cable box and saying it's now an open marketplace, right? And marketplace leads a little bit to chaos, right? But what that does is it also changes the nature of the legacy media networks, right? So what are the old media companies that controlled the cable box? In a way, sure, many of them have their own IP, and not taking anything away from obviously the wonderful content that comes through those pipes, but they really were real estate companies, right? These are real estate companies that owned, some of them, the corner of Main and Main on this cable box, but they were able to sit between content producers, content creators, and the consumer. And by controlling that pipe within, or those channels within the cable box and the cable, MVPD itself, there was a self-contained controlled system with gatekeepers, right? And now we have the streaming world that effectively kind of blows it wide open, right? So the problem with this streaming world that blows it kind of wide open is that, man, it's confusing, right? And so, right, there was something nice, and you see it kind of, cutesy on Twitter, right, all the time. Oh man, if I add up the price of all my subscriptions, it's more than cable, right? Well, two things, I guess, I'd say about that, right? Number one, you can't really compare the services you had in addition to cable, right, when you're comparing it to cutting the cord. So if I was a cable subscriber and had HBO, Showtime, and Netflix, then putting HBO, Showtime, and Netflix in the cord cutter bucket comparing prices isn't really fair, right? It's not an apples to apples basis. That's kind of one of my other kind of pet peeves. But really what it is there's a lot of choice, right? We opened up, we basically broke this cable box, right? And we said, okay, anybody who wants to either create their own app, or anybody who wants to who wants to make a show, yeah, here's the technology. There's a ton of technology providers that will help you do every piece of this, whether it's a player, so on and so forth, right? And I think what that really opened up is that's great, right? But it's confusing, right? And it's a lot, and it could be overwhelming. And I think everyone, obviously, all the studies are trying to figure out, are people going to have one service? Are people going to have two services? Are people going to have 12 services? And the one thing that's interesting is we did a survey. It's now about like 5-6 months old, but it was in COVID time, and we were saying basically, right? It was a question of around streaming services. So, is it easy to find a new streaming service, right? Is this complicated? And it was like 75 to 80% said it was complicated, right? This is confusing. This whole new system is confusing. Then the follow-up question is, well, do you have enough streaming services, or would you like more? And it was actually not the same necessarily people, but 75 to 80% said they were looking for more, right? And so we actually feel that like the common the common theme or the common takeaway is there are so many streaming services. People are tired. They don't want them. We actually think that's patently false, right? It's people need help, right? People need help figuring out what to do. They need guides, right? They need organization. They need services to help them. They need a better way to do it. And no question, the cable box, right, was a better way, but one size fits all, right, certainly doesn't make any sense at all. Obviously through the process, just to split it up a little bit, we have the SVODs, the AVODs, the FASTs, and then we have the vMVPDs, right? And sort of along the way, as the vMVPDs, just to talk about them for a second, right? That's confusing in and of itself also, right? Like, all right, there are all these services, they have live TV. How is a consumer supposed to know what to do? And we probably all know people, if not ourselves, if there are cord shavers, right, on the call. Okay, I got a spreadsheet and I've got, this service has these channels and that service has these channels and my wife needs this and my kids need this. And that part also, right, I think is confusing. And even to do that research, you have to actually know, what services to even look into in the first place. But I think everybody can agree TV is changing. There's a lot of services and it's complicated, right? I'll say the other thing that we believe very much is that the streaming wars is just an incorrect term that we wish kind of went away, right? Because it really is the streaming revolution, right? This is not about Netflix versus Hulu, Amazon here coming off the top ropes. Like, sure, is there competition here? Of course, but this is a growing pie, right? This is about that there are still 73 million traditional TV subscribers in this country. And now there's a little bit geographic bias, right? When I talk to my former peers in Wall Street, right? Or anybody, right, who lives in New York or maybe LA or San Francisco or any big city, that number is astounding to them, right? They assume everyone has gotten rid of cable because who needs cable? Why do people give up? And the answer is no, right? If you go to many different places around the country, not necessarily traveling, but talking to people, right? 73 million people. Now, some of them don't have a choice, right? Some of them can't get high-speed broadband to offset it. But our thesis is actually it's not the opposite. It's people don't know. People don't know, and moving, before even on demand, that there are these vMVPDs, right? That there are the ways to get the channels you need. And a lot of noise is made about YouTube TV going from 50 to 65 and Hulu Live going from 50 to 55. Now it's a 65 and Sling raising from 30 to 35. What obviously isn't covered as much, right, is what DirecTV and Dish and Comcast and Charter are all doing to their prices and frankly, their fees, right? And my third pet peeve, and if there's anything that can come out, it is absolutely ridiculous that there's anything called a broadcast fee or a regional sports fee. If you can't choose to not pay it, then it's not a fee, it's part of the price. And I think that actually comes into the streaming revolution and educating consumers that they're paying way too much. And if we did apples to apples, man, there should be, by our estimate, probably 30 million households on a vMVPD today. Right? But the bottom line is, whether you're a vMVPD or an SVOD or an AVOD, those 73 million households, we believe, like Roku does, those are all moving over to streaming. Is it the next 2 years? No. Is it the next 5 years? Is it 10 years from now? And we could all kind of pick what that point is, but it's moving over, right? And broadband speeds are picking up, and there are more broadband providers. And again, I think that it's a good point just to start to talk about what's the other part of the streaming revolution, right? It's this decoupling that was in my introduction or the slide. The internet service providers right now are playing a very quiet but very, very interesting role in the streaming revolution, right? We think back against the last 30 years, there was so much consolidation on the distributor side, right? Why? Well, the bigger you were, the more heft you can throw around, right? And the better prices the distributors, the MVPDs, are able to get for the content, right? So no matter who you are on the content side, right? The MFNs, say Comcast and Charter, throw in DirecTV and Dish, but really Comcast and Charter have the best pricing. So if I'm a regional overbuilder, if I'm a small little cable company with 3,000 subs or 30,000 subs or 300,000 subs, right? Every year that goes by, I'm getting hammered and hammered, right? Because all the prices are going higher. And so my profit margins are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But along comes streaming, and what streaming has done has effectively said it's an even playing field right now, right? Sure, there's other economies of scale operationally, et cetera, but at the end of the day, right, to be an ISP, right, to be a delivery, an internet or a video delivery company even, right, you just need to figure out how to bring high-speed internet to a person's home, right? The margins are incredible, right? The margins on delivering internet are incredible. And what you're seeing on the ground right now is another kind of revolution, right? I actually call it the golden age of the overbuilder, right? And these overbuilders are seeing, holy cow, if we don't focus on video, right, and let the streaming marketplace, let consumers figure out what to stream, like let them handle it, right? I can now bring broadband to a home. These companies are trading, just to not bring a little money, they're trading at about $2,500 to $5,000 a subscriber in the marketplace. So what do I mean by that? Infrastructure funds are coming in, private equity funds are coming in, VC funds are coming in. They're seeing these returns, they're seeing the margins on bringing internet because of the streaming revolution. This would not be happening if consumers were only able to get their video from the provider. And I think that, taking into account, and we're going to dive deeper in a little bit into, what's actually driving that and how that decisions are being made. But I think that thinking about the internet provider and thinking about the cost of internet delivery is really what's opening up here. So I wish we all talked about the streaming revolution instead of the streaming wars, because somebody who cuts their $110 video cable bill, that's a lot of dollars to dish out, right? And maybe they're getting HBO Max like I am for free, right, from AT&T, from my internet provider, right? I was going to be an Amazon Prime subscriber, whether there was Amazon Prime Video or not. Like, that's free. I don't consider myself paying for Amazon Prime Video, right? I got an iPhone. Man, Apple TV Plus might be free for the rest of the time. And so what we think that means is there's not really this war, and it's not just about these guys battling it out in the ring. In fact, there's, we think, a massive opportunity for new players to come in, right? For whether they're upstarts, whether they're old or new, on the streaming side, and basically say, I can make great content, right? I can get people to watch and enjoy my stuff, but how do I get them? How do I retain them? And there's been many seminars that have talked about that. I think it's really important. And it's going to be, we're just at the beginning of all this. But I think the most important thing is to realize is it's not a war. There's going to be winners everywhere, and it's not mutually exclusive. I think that at the end of the day, like I said, it's not about competition, and it's really about opportunity. And there are winners here. And I really believe it's consumers are winners, right? Media companies can be winners, and internet service providers can also be winners. And I think that at the end of the day, a principle I really say is that if you can create content that people want, you will succeed, right? If your business model was based on, frankly, shoving content down the throats of people who didn't want it because it was in the big bundle, then you're in trouble, right? And you need to figure out new ways of doing business. But there are certainly, items that made up the big bundle that, were subsidized by the rest of us. And that's going away. The concept of being able to shove something in there because a few really, really like it, but 90% have no interest in it, like, yikes, we're not going back to that, right? Because now there's options, now there's choice. Now there's the people who just want a few entertainment cable networks can go get Philo. Like, why are they paying for all that sports? Why are they paying for the broadcast, right? And I think we'll dig in a little bit deeper. I thought I'd pause there, Eric. I don't know. I know it might make sense to. I'd love to make this as interactive as we can, but maybe open up the floor for some questions here.
Yeah, let's start taking some questions. Super fascinating. So if y'all want to open up the Q&A bin and drop questions in there, we'd love to get to some of them. I get to go first though, since it's me on camera right now, and got a lot of there's just like, you're really, really making me think anyway. So one thing that I've wondered or thought about is, as the direct-to-consumer movement continues to expand, and larger studios are spinning up their own direct-to-consumer offerings and limiting the amount that they're licensing those to MFNs, to Comcast. the economics of that just seem like a little bit perilous. I mean, you have like 73 million subscribers in that are subscribers of Comcast, and they're paying Comcast so that Comcast can then go license content, and they're paying a company like Warner Brothers for HBO, and they're paying a lot. Hundreds of millions of dollars go out the door from companies like Comcast into studios. When you pull your content off of Comcast, that money's gone, and you're replacing it with your own streaming service. Um, and to me, that just like, when does that pay off? And aren't those organizations taking a huge risk in doing so? And then that, of course, is what pays for the content to get produced in the first place. So I don't know. Talk a little bit about that if you would.
Yeah, so I mean, that's back to Bob Iger, right? Like trading $17 of linear TV dollars for $7 of streaming dollars. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the benefit there is they're getting the $7, right? So there's a wholesale versus retail element, to not the 17, but the
Yeah.
effective markup, right? That Comcast charges when they would make their margin. It's the innovator's dilemma. I mean, if you guys have read Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma, would certainly encourage it. It's like a book that changed my investing life, right? And the idea there is like, why do you see companies go in the dumpster of history? Is because it's really painful to make the long-term necessary changes to sacrifice today for tomorrow, right? And so the idea there would be is like Disney was able, and why were they able to do it? Frankly, I believe because they have real IP. Again, no offense to any other media companies that might be on the call, but my daughter is going to be watching princess movies because she loves that stuff, right? Now, at the end of the day, she loves shows on Netflix and Amazon also, right? And so, which is more powerful, 100 years of Disney IP or Netflix and Amazon making good enough kids content, right? Back to the concept of like the answer is back to the stock market. The only reason that it works, I believe, right? The reason why David Zaslav at Discovery, right, and Viacom with the soon-to-be Paramount Plus, right, are able to sort of feel more confident jumping in is because when Disney Plus has pulled the Disney Plus streaming, I mean, think about what we just went through, COVID and like their parks business and the movie theater business, stocks at an all-time high, right? Because it's all about when the quarter comes out, what's it about? It's about subscribers. The only thing that matters is subscriber numbers. And so, yes, there is less cash. Disney is probably going to earn a fifth of what they earned 3 years ago, but the stock is probably up 80% because it's all about subscribers. And I think part of it is real, right? Part of it is let's build this new ecosystem out to the future. But part of it is, it's the moment. It's what does the market care about today? It's about growth. It's about subscriber growth. We'll worry about profits in the future. Is that sustainable? The question is, what is that? What does sustainable mean, right? What's that timeline look like? I think smaller players, to your point though, are going to have some issues here, right? Because as people cut the cord and that cash flow that's still coming out of the cable bundle is going to dwindle, right? And it's going to dwindle. And I wouldn't want to have any debt if I was a media company. If I was a small media company, I'd be trying to pay down my debt as fast as I possibly could, because it's only going to get worse from here, and the market does pick winners and losers. I see a whole bunch of questions coming in. Do you want me just to pick from them?
Yeah, so let's start with, here's one from Sylvester Lamb. There's a lot of players in the OTT streaming space, and there's more all the time. And there's a lot of confusion with that. Do you believe that there will be a massive consolidation among the streaming channels?
Okay. So the nice thing about, right, the second part of the presentation and why I'm no longer on Wall Street is because I'll take the other side of that. And I'd say that massive consolidation does not need to take place, right? What needs to happen though are the tools need to be created to help consumers piece this together. So if you think about what consolidation really means is like, okay, we don't have the tools. And so the best and the biggest win, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what we're doing in the second half of this. But if there wasn't MyBundle.tv, if there weren't some of the other great companies that are frankly trying to do similar stuff that we are, right? The only answer is consolidation. But technology, right? And technology and this kind of open market, it allows us to almost have a synthetic consolidation. And that's firmly what I believe is happening, right? Is that you're going to have the tools that will allow consumers to build back their bundle a la carte. Like everybody wants a la carte. Like that's where we're heading, right? But companies are not going to all of a sudden say, oh, sure, just pick the channels you want, right? That's effectively what this whole streaming revolution is about, is breaking up the consolidation that was the big bundle. And the first stop is corporate bundles, right? And that's what we have right now, right? Whether it's Hulu, whether it's Peacock, whether it's HBO Max, Discovery Plus, we're basically just having these little corporate bundles, and they're starting with on demand, right? But what we're slowly moving to, where I believe we're heading, is each corporate bundle is going to have live content also, right? Peacock's taking the first step there. I don't believe it's going to be too long before HBO Max answers that with CNN content, TNT, TBS. Maybe you'll be able to watch some NBA on HBO Max, right? Discovery Plus starting off. Okay, we're not going to put the linear feeds in Discovery Plus because we still want to, make money off of the old way, but that's not going to last, right? And if it's not going to last, does it matter? Does the average consumer who tells us they need Discovery Channel, that they tell us they need the Food Network, do they need the live feed of Food Network, or do they need Food Network type content, right? And just to answer, Eric, the previous question, if Discovery Plus didn't exist, if Discovery said we're not putting any of our content outside the bundle ever, well, then Tastemade is going to be the new, Food Network, and there's going to be a new travel channel. I think that every legacy media company understands that and now realizes, man, if we don't do it, somebody else will, because it's an open marketplace.
Yeah, I really like your point about, and I hadn't thought about this before, how the ISPs, the companies like Comcast that are delivering content and the real estate and the pipes, they don't have to deliver content, and that business isn't why they got into business in the first place. It's to be the pipes, and to attract people to cable and to attract people to their internet service providing. They had to have some reason to make it worthwhile, and so content was it. But they don't really need that anymore. And as you're saying, like, the delivery business is a great business.
Yeah, I'll go a step further and we'll talk about it in a few slides. It's not only that they not need that, it is in their very best interest to run as fast as they can.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting kind of viewpoint we have, because we're in that world also right now. And so let's see if there's any more. Certainly fragmentation. I don't know if you like. I guess.
Yeah, I like Marco's question. He's talking about fragmentation of content is really affecting the customer experience. It makes it tougher to find stuff. Is search aggregation the best solution? And what players are suited to offer the best experience and capture the most value? That seems like a good segue.
Sure. Yeah. No, we definitely can hop in. So yeah, I'll semi-biasedly say absolutely. It's a terrible customer experience the way the world is today. Yes, search aggregation is the best solution. I'll put forward, I don't believe any of the current platforms are best suited for it, though. I think that's what makes it, interesting for us to get out of bed every day, and for some of our other peers who are going after a similar market. And I think this next slide, maybe I'll answer this question, Marco, just jumping through this, right? And these are MyBundle.tv's stakeholders, if you will, right? These are the people that we care about, and I'll kind of jump into this and answer it along with kind of what we're doing, right? So you got the million legacy TV households, right, who hate their cable company, okay? You've got 43 million cord cutters or nevers, right? This includes, let's say, VMVPDs that, exactly like you asked, right? What do I do? I know I've got my services, but I have to search across services, and I have to, even find the service, pain in the butt, right? There are over 1,700 internet service providers, right, who are saying, what does the future look like for me? And of course, the answer we could consider 5,000 streaming services. We peg it at about 300. And what we, as a business, believe is that if anybody whose day job is about finding subscribers and growing their streaming service business, that counts as a streaming service you can play. You don't need 60 million subscribers to earn a living, right? To build a successful business, right? But we're not necessarily counting the Yule log, fire on Roku. No offense if there's anybody who created that on the call, but the idea is these are real businesses. We think about it. And so to answer the question, right, what do we do? So what does MyBundle.tv do? Try to kind of go quick through this, right? First tool is our streaming recommendation tool. What we call is our Find My Bundle tool. And what we basically do is you answer a few questions. You pick the channels that you need, and we will tell you which live TV streaming service has the channels you need. So there's a research project, could take a day or two. You have to know, YouTube TV, Hulu, Fubo, Philo, Vidgo, Friendly, Lowcast, Antenna. And we basically say, there's no reason to read the blogs. There's no reason to do all the spreadsheets and everything. We'll do it for you, right? It's geo-based and everything, right? Our streaming marketplace, right now we have 150 streaming services in there, and we're kind of solving what problem right there is the aggregation concept. How do I find new streaming services, right? How do streaming services find new customers, right? And the idea is there really was no good source over the internet that certainly dealt with the tail, right? That dealt with anybody more than streaming services 1 to 20, 30. Now we all know there's Real Good out there. There's Just Watch. I think they do a great job, right? So there are other services I think that are focused on some of these problems as well. So what are the solutions, we think, for these four kind of players, and how do we work that in? What do we do, right? And so I kind of mentioned for the 73 million legacy TV households, we believe that number today should probably be 40 million. We think there's about 30 to 35 million households that if only I could knock on their door and tell them that, hey, there's a better way to do this, they would be on the vMVPD, which is why I'm actually pretty bullish on these vMVPDs. There's 11 million subscribers. There's a big fight out there in the Fubo and the stock world. Is it too cheap? Is it worth $8? Is it worth 800? It's not worth 800 and it's not worth 8. It's probably, somewhere around here because there's going to be a tremendous amount of growth. So the $8 view is, I think, just wrong. There's a lot of growth to happen kind of coming up. What's the profitability of a vMVPD? That's a whole nother story, right? But the answer is there's a lot of growth there. We think there's a transition. Now, the answer is that transition, we think, is at the end of the day, there's also a lot of people who are looking for streaming services, who don't need sports, who now can get their news through many of the free services, right? Who might want, not necessarily needing the live feed of a cable channel, but really love having Food Network on in the background as they're, going about their day, right? And so there are all these streaming services, kind of just jumping to over here, right? How do they find, what's the biggest, problem with the streaming service has is how do I find my market? If I'm not Netflix, I don't have their marketing budget. How do I find customers that would be interested in what I have? Obviously, then how do I retain them, right? This is not a simple business, right? It's good for consumers that there's choice, but that doesn't mean it's easy, right? But at the end of the day, right, how can we find customers? What are the 43 million and growing? This is the industry, right? Moving forward, right? They want to learn. They want to discover new streaming services. We know they do, right? They want to easily find out, where can I find TV shows and movies, right? Where can I get recommendations, right? And then last but not least here, right, are the internet service providers. As we ended with that Q&A with Eric, all they care about is adding internet customers. That's it. They're making a ton of money. Their company goes up in value every time they add an internet customer. They can take that money, put it back in the ground, put some more fiber to the next neighborhood, the next customer, whether it's fiber or wireless, and that's the name of the game there. So just again, I kind of talked about the Find My Bundle, easy flow, right? We ask a few questions, zip code based, you take the channels, and we present a few different solutions, right? So we present a few different solutions on the live TV side, as well as our kind of Build My Bundle, which introduces people to new streaming services that maybe aren't live TV. So you tell us you can kind of sort of see it here. You're into the Food Network. We'll say, hey, did you know Food Network Kitchen exists, right? You're into CNN. Well, CNN doesn't have a direct to consumer streaming service, but Newsy's pretty good, right? Here's some more broad category ones. What we're also doing on the Find My Bundle tool is helping people find a new internet service provider, right? Or find a alternative internet service provider, because at the end of the day, right, the cheaper the internet, the more streaming, right? The more it makes sense to kind of cut the cord. And as these fiber providers grow, you get this situation where we all might have had it. Well, okay, I call to cancel my video, and then my current provider says, well, your internet price is going up $30. Well, that goes away if there's a competitor in the neighborhood. And what's actually happening is, as those monopoly providers in an area raise their prices, right, it's an Excel spreadsheet for an internet service provider to grow into a new area. And if the prices are higher, there's an umbrella that prices go up, I can come underneath And all of a sudden, you have new internet service providers in growing areas. By the way, that's what's happening with the bundle, right? It's a ludicrous business concept that when people are stopping to use your product, you raise your prices. That's not going to cause more people, right? All they're trying to do, and it's a principal agent problem, right? Because it's not the media companies that are raising their prices to the consumer, it's these MVPDs. And so there's the tragedy of that middleman, right? But as prices go up, both in traditional and vMVPDs, right? All these SVOD and AVOD services get more interesting, right? Because instead of 43 million households, there's going to be 53 million households, then 63 million households. And now it's going to make even more sense for new SVOD and new AVOD services to come along and get this bigger pool to be there. I wanted to kind of just jump right here. I thought I'd share some interesting data. Take a look for 1 second. Sorry about this. Joys of working from home. So what is this data here? These on the left are the top channels that people are selecting. The percentage of time that people select a channel in our Find My Bundle tool. So as you can imagine, right, the big broadcast networks are the largest. But what I was shocked, frankly, when I started this was a couple of these I wouldn't have expected to be there, right? And it actually kind of speaks to, you know, some of these numbers over here, right, about why certain of these services, right, are recommended. And so what does this mean? The difference between bundle and standalone is this is the percentage of time a service from these companies has 100% of the channels requested, right? Bundled means this is the percentage of time this service plus another will get you 100% of the channels you need, right? And so it's just an interesting kind of view, right? You know, the guys at A&E, I don't even know if they have the knowledge of how powerful something is. Now, it could be that 46% of people, right, want the History channel, but do you need the History channel, right? So these are numbers, these are our recommendations. This is a fact. People tell us what they need. We tell them what they need, right? Maybe History channel is very important to many, but not extremely important to a bunch. And so that's a whole another level. I thought it would just be interesting to share the way we present our channels. We have the top 24 channels, and then we have a bunch others. So when we look at the others beyond the top 24 that we list, ESPN2, FS1, the Weather Channel, Lifetime, and Sci-Fi are actually the 5 next most popular people scrolling down and actually picking channels, and they're in the mid to high teens ratios there. Second part, again, our streaming marketplace. We show each app has a card, each app has its own shingle, and then we're sending people directly to the streaming services websites where consumers can sign up. Jumping to the ISPs a little bit, Point Broadband was a cable company in the Tri-Cities DMA. They had one price hike too many from the media networks or the retrans or what have you, and they said, we're done. And they basically said, we're gonna just push people to vMVPDs. And so what they did was, first they had a few links on the bottom saying, check out Sling, check out, you know, YouTube TV, and they were finding that the same problem we know, it became a research project. And so how else can they help their consumers? And we thanked them because they actually came to us and said, we think you have a pretty cool solution. Can you build something for us? And what we're able to do is now build our tools, take our tools, put their branding on it, right? And help their customers find the content that they need, right? And so now Point Broadband is actually their own cable company, or sorry, their own broadband company right now. They're not selling new video packages. They're basically saying to each household, they could be knocking on doors and saying, hey, we want to help you find the content that's right for you. Use these tools. And so we're able to take what we've built with Point Broadband and bring them to many more of these ISPs and cable companies. So what's interesting about many companies on this list is you take a company like CenturyLink, which is the 5th biggest telco in the country, right? They're basically fully on, like they'll offer Dish, they'll offer DirecTV, they want to offer everything. What they realize is just not worth being in their own video product business anymore. That's CenturyLink making this decision, right? You have WOW is their most traditional overbuilder that you can possibly get, right? And they're saying they're tired of going head to head with Comcast and Charter. Why try to fight that fight? They have their own Wow TV Plus. It's a great, full service kind of bundle over IP product. But what if somebody doesn't need that, right? What if they could win internet customers by telling somebody to get Sling Blue for $35, right? And so the idea is it works for big players without video. It works for players with video. It works for smaller companies. And I'll share that as we're out there having conversations with dozens more ISPs to kind of join our program, is that these small providers do not make money selling video anymore. And that's the other part. Like everybody, I think we all have been focused on the streaming side, almost like a pull. Oh, consumers have all these other alternatives. They're all excited. They just need Netflix. They just need Amazon, Curiosity, find. We think it's probably the early stages, but over the next 2 years, you're going to see a massive, massive move from these smaller regional cable companies just to shut down the systems, because they are costing them money, right? These rate hikes that the media companies keep pushing through, there's pain there, and it's causing the demise of the bundle, right? And so you have the providers basically saying, I'm out, because it's not just what can I charge my customer minus my content cost, right? There are truck rolls. There's all those calls, right? Video breaks and internet doesn't. That's just kind of the kind of sort of saying. So I'll share what one of our provider partners basically said to us is that video is 95% of my complaints and 0% of my profit. And so these smaller players, and there's a lot of them out there, literally hundreds, if not over 1,000, are going to be looking what comes next. And just to give you a sense, this is kind of how we partner with ISPs, right? And so this is CenturyLink's TV page right now. And it's talking about, hey, we want to help you find the product that's right for you. You click into that get personalized recommendation. Those are mybundle.tv's tools, right? This is MetroNet offering their customers these streaming services, right? Because these ISPs want to help their customers figure out what to stream, right? Before I just jump into the what's next on the subscription management platform, right? Yeah, we asked the question before, what can we help consumers do? So we're not just helping people find streaming services that are right for them. You actually can, similar to a Just Watched or a Real Good, come in, type in a TV show, right? And we'll help you find the service that it's on, right? You could type in a movie, we'll help you find the service on. But we think that's really just the beginning. We think that's sort of table stakes, solving consumers' two main problems. Because how do I find what I want to watch is certainly one problem, right? Help me figure out what I want to watch next is actually a separate problem, right? Recommendations, no, it's not just where can I find X, it's help me even think about what I might want to watch next, right? Save me that time, right? And the third thing, frankly, is sure, this sounds good, and back to the consolidation question, but I don't want to subscribe in 8 different places with 8 different credit card logins and passwords and not even login and passwords, more just like have my credit card out there in 8 different companies, right? Maybe it's 12, maybe it's 14. And the point here is that the number doesn't have to matter, right? If there's a platform, right? If there's an aggregation platform that can help a consumer kind of keep it all in one place, and specifically on the billing side. I think the billing side is frankly more important. I mean, yeah, sure, it would be great if I, a consumer, can just put one app on my TV and watch everything in there, but I think that's less important, right? I think actually, we change channels, right, on our TV set, right? We can change apps on our TV set. But it was convenient that we paid one bill to the cable company, right? And ultimately, I think what we're getting to is a point where it's going a la carte, right? And that's what subscription management is all about. It's saying, here are all the services, click, 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 sign up, subscribe, boom, one bill. I think that is what is extremely necessary for the streaming revolution, right, to really take off. And I, somewhat biased, but also understanding the business models, I don't believe Amazon and Roku are the right solution for streaming services, more so even than consumers, right? It's easy. They own the real estate right now. They're in 40, 50 million households. That's great. If you're a streaming service, you got to be very careful, right? Working with them. Not only because, depending on the program, they want the data, they want to control the data. It's follow the money, right? Frankly, Roku's $53 billion market cap, it's not helping sign up. It's not because of signing up subscription. That's all the ad dollars. That's the stock market saying there was $70 billion of TV ad money that's moving to streaming. That's Roku and Amazon are going to get that, right? Because Roku is going to help push consumers to wherever they make the most money, right? And so I think you're going to see many fights over the next few years. They've only just begun. I know HBO Max and Peacock, it's just begun, right? And the nice thing, what gives me confidence in our system, in well, not just my bundle, but everybody on this call, is that it's a $50 dongle, right? We're not talking about a $1,200 phone that I need to go out and replace because Apple blocked HBO Max. It's that if any of the platforms takes too strong of a position, then we're going to be able to go out and replace it for $50. And frankly, you're going to get to a point where the streaming services might come together and say, hey, here's another dongle, right? Here's this and here's that. And so I think that that's something that's really, really going to take, going to be here. And so just back to the subscription manager and how we envision it, right? That's what we're building today. We're already working with partners. We're working with streaming services, and we're doing it for them also. So we're asking consumers, what do they want? We're asking streaming services, what do you want? And we're asking our ISP partners, what do you want? Because what we're building, we're not just building for mybundle.tv, we're building it for our ISP partners and their 5.6 million current customers. And we obviously are in conversations with many more ISPs as well to really grow that number. And the idea is this, back to that question, do we need consolidation? No, right? What we need is a functioning ecosystem that can connect consumers to streaming services, consumers to ISPs, and help all these parties work together and not in duplicative fashions. And so I think I'm very excited. Again, obviously there's bias is only, I think we have a great solution that's only just begun, right? We've got another big update coming on Tuesday in terms of how our TV recommendations work, right? Just to throw one more thing out there, you could see here as the foundation for the subscription manager, and you could do this today. You could create a profile in My Bundle, put your apps in, do cross-app search, cross-app browsing, add to your watch list, so on and so forth. And we think that there's really exciting innovation coming, not just from us, right, but from a bunch of great companies like us. And the nice thing is, I do believe this doesn't have to be a winner take all, right? This is a streaming, this is a revolution, right? And there's plenty of opportunities for technology companies like mybundle.tv and others to really make a difference and to make all of our stakeholders whole and have a much better experience in this TV world. That's it. I certainly, got close here, but would love to take any more questions here.
Thank you, Jason. Great talk. Yeah, we have time for a couple of questions. I've got a lot of questions myself, but let's start with some from our bin, and we only have a couple minutes. So here's one that's about Movies Anywhere and Hulu and Disney. So how do you see the roles of Movies Anywhere versus Disney Plus and Hulu? They are mostly owned by Disney and providing different business models. Seems like we are getting to one or two big players and then the rest.
So I think on the movie side, I think one of the most interesting things that is, again, the streaming revolution is that the studio gets to be the retailer, right? Why are we seeing movies? Sure, COVID sped it up, but Disney Plus can offer a movie in their own app, right? And take all the money, right? They don't have to split it with iTunes. They don't have to split it through Amazon. I think that getting your app out there, if you're a studio, right? I think it's interesting, just HBO Max giving away all their movies. I think that's let's get as many subscribers as we possibly can game. But I think down the road, when Warner puts out a movie, right, maybe HBO Max gets it first and all the other stores get it 30 days later. I think we have the whole windowing concept is going to massive change. I am not particularly bullish on movie theaters. I think that the more expensive it gets, I don't really see why you only want to keep your content there. So I think the windowing is definitely going to change there.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for new windows. Let's take at least one more question. This is from our friend Davinder Luthra. Thank you, Davinder. Kind of about an international application for what you're doing. What's your view on the need for this service in, say, the UK or other territories? Given that,
yeah, man, I wish we could build fast enough. We have other countries sort of asking us. It's kind of cool. Like, hey, can you bring this to like other companies in other countries, whether it's Canada or Spain or certainly the UK. So, it's going to be a race. Obviously, hopefully 5 years from now we'll have one at least, or be certainly still in the race. But there's definitely an opportunity, I think, internationally for this service to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much to think about here. One of the things that keeps me on Comcast really is the the experience. I can talk into my remote and just say, I want to watch American Pickers, and it finds it for me and I can watch it. And that's really convenient. And having to hook up a bunch of different things or search around to find something or download an app, like I don't really want to do that. And the other people in my family aren't going to, they're going to ask me to. So, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for those that build user experiences um, to provide a lot of value in this space as well.
Yeah, I think specifically with Comcast, like it's an interesting concept because they have their own territory. So they're the biggest. They obviously can invest in the technology, right? So think about the 1,700 ISPs. Effectively, we're making the same argument, right? I'm not telling you tomorrow I'm going to have a remote that you can talk into, but down the road, why not, right? The idea is X1 going to represent every ISP, or is there like, hey, that doesn't make sense. I'm competing with Comcast. So a competitor. And so I think that door is open, right, for other providers to kind of come in. And listen, TiVo is obviously, right, that's their play.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, Apple TV does a pretty good job, and Roku does a pretty good job. And yeah, so I think that you make a good point. The ecosystem is growing rather than contracting, and there's no reason for it to not continue to in a lot of really interesting ways. And yeah, y'all are doing God's work, enabling inclusion and diversity in the OTT sphere.
I listen, I kind of joke. I started by saying the real world. I have a tremendous amount of respect for every player in here, like waking up every morning, trying to, earn their keep and really build something. And I think that that's what's fascinating about today is it's an open marketplace, right? It's not for companies basically deciding this is the way it's going to be. And so ultimately, whoever can build the best consumer product for consumers and for streaming services, I think it's going to be there. And I think it's really about, again, personalized experiences. I see a comment right there with Spence. I 100% agree, right? This is about being able to give each person tailored recommendations, right? And we're heading there. It's happening. And it's, again, I think this whole streaming revolution is really only getting started. We're really excited.
Yeah, power to the people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well, we have to close up because we're past time. Jason, thanks so much. Fascinating. And I just love hearing your perspective. I hope you come back. And I want to thank everybody for jumping on with us today for this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. As always, session was recorded and it'll be available on our website at OTT.X.org, where OTT.X members can also get their hands on the PowerPoint presentations and a whole lot of other valuable videos and decks from over the last year. We've also got big plans for 2021. So I want to make sure everybody's aware of the events, activities, and opportunities that we have. You can check those out on our website. Our next webinar is on February 17th, where we'll be welcoming the always engaging Teresa Phillips of Spherix. So it's just a couple of weeks away. Put that on your calendar. And of course, our first major event of 2021, the OTT.X Spring Summit. It's running March 9th through 11th. We've got a lot of incredible presentations, workshops, and opportunities to connect with your colleagues across the OTT sphere. It's the closest you can get to a real in-person conference without a room full of vaccinated people. So you can find out all about these on our website at OTT.X.org. And I want to thank everybody once again for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks a lot.